So we set up the claw in class, and basically what we did is we broke down the movement of this thing. So the way that I set this up was in tiers, like this, and this guy being one tier, this, and that one being another, and so on and so forth, just kind of like body parts are. So if we thought of this as a shoulder, so we have like the shoulder joint, and we have the shoulder bone, right? Or we have something here to control that, so that we're able to use this and animate this, and it control that, and so on and so forth. So each one of them were built in tiers. Once we figured out how these had to work, so we thought about the order of things. If I move this, or I rotate this in this case, if I rotate this, I want to rotate this, which in turn rotates that. Okay? And then we put this together in reverse form. So this, and this is only because we were setting this up with edit parenting. Okay? When we're parenting things, we're able to take something, shift select what we want it to follow, or we want it to be a child of. So this would be the child, in other words, and this would be the parent. Sorry, child, parent. Okay? And that's the selection order you have to use for the edit parent. So if I come in here, we think of this how we want it to work. We want it to work by rotating this, which will rotate that, and rotate that. And then we did that in sections. So we have these in tiers. And then we reverse the order. So we basically say, so if it worked from this to that, then I need to have this as a child of this. So this will follow this. Let P to parent, which is the same thing as edit parent. And there's the hotkey right there. This to this, P to parent that. And there we go. We have one of the joints or sections set up. Now if we do this again, it's the same thing for these. So child, parent, child, shift select the parent, hit P or edit parent, child, select the parent, hit P, or again, edit parent. And always check them. So you can select it as you do it, and that works. This works. Okay. And so on and so forth. For this one, we have 3 children. They're going to follow a parent. And then the parent's going to follow the controller, which then becomes the parent. So in this case, just like all the others, you can think of it as a family tree if you like, if that helps out. Say this is grandma, this is daughter, okay, so this is her mom, and this is the mom of the triplets, and so on and so forth. So what I can do is I can select these 3, because you can have more than one selected at one time. Shift select the parent and hit P or edit parent. Then select the parent, shift select the controller and hit P. Okay? When you have that set, test it. I should be able to select the controller, move the claw around, and select each individual claw and do this whole bit. Okay? Now, once we set that up, we have it set up in tiers. So anytime we select a controller, everything that's going to follow that controller is selected. Okay? And now we think of how we want this thing to work. So basically we want this to follow this. I'm sorry, this to control this one to control that one, and that one to control that one. Which means we can parent these in the reverse order just like we did each tier. So if I select this, shift select this, and hit P to parent it, right? Then I can select this one, and when I rotate it, the other one should follow. And then I can select this one and rotate it, and that should follow, which is really good. Now I'm going to hit Control Z to undo this just to get it in place again. I'll hit Q on my keyboard, selects my selection tool. This is a good way of working because the selection tool only allows you to select or deselect. It's not going to allow you to move things, rotate them, so you won't have any accidentals in here. So I'm going to select this one, and it needs to follow this one, and I'll hit P to parent it. I'll select this one, shift select that one, hit P to parent it. Okay, and this one I made as a base. It's going to be more of like a master, which takes everything with it. So I'll select this one, shift select that one, child parent, right? P to parent. And now I should test this by moving this bottom object, which is the base. It moves everything with it, that's good. And I can select each one of these. Oops, I didn't want to select the base again. I wanted to select the controller there and rotate it. Select the other controller, rotate it, the other one, rotate it, and you can set keys on just the controllers, okay? Now, we've already done that. And one of the other things that we've done is we were able to select the different controllers by holding Shift and clicking on each controller. That puts them in a separate selection mode. And that allows me to rotate these all at one time. So if I rotate in Z, they all do this. If I rotate in X, they all go to side, okay? If I rotate in Y, they should all spin. Once you select those, we were able to make a quick selection set. So we went up to Create, down to Sets, and over to Quick Select Set. This is basically so that I do not have to select each one of these every single time, or shift select each one of these every single time that I want to move all of them. For quick animations, this is going to be perfect, but for more intricate animations, you're probably going to have to move each one of them anyhow, which is okay because we can still have this and it's not going to be a problem. Now, if I label this, I can say claw controllers, and I hit enter, and I really did want to add it to the shelf, so I should have drug it up here, but that's okay. If I deselect it, I would have a button up here if I would have clicked the add shelf button. But what I can do is I can go up to edit, down to quick select sets, and click on the claw controller. And if I hold down shift and control and click it, so shift plus control plus left mouse button, I can add that little icon up here, and it acts as though I go to edit, down to quick select sets, and click on claw controller. It's the same thing. Basically it selects all of the controllers. See that? You want to be careful. I'll go to the side here. Selects all the controllers the way that I set them up to be selected. Okay? So it's kind of like shift selecting each one. And the top one is selected last. It doesn't really matter because they're all rotating from their pivot points, which are dead center in here, okay? The next thing is that we would like to set up some basic set-driven keys. And that's what we're going to do in the next tutorial. So to set driven keys, or to set up set-driven keys, setting up set-driven keys is very easy to do through the channel box. And there's another way of doing it through up here, but we're going to go through the channel box today. The channel box is always there for the most part. I work with it open pretty much all the time. And it's going to allow us to make and edit any of the types of attributes that we may have in here. Okay? That being said, I will select the nerve circle, and generally I would change the names of these, and I suggest you do the same. So I would like to call this the claw controller, and this is directly the claw part, so the other ones you can label them however you need to label them. Not really a big deal. Now I'll hit Q on my keyboard so that I can select my selection tool. Okay, I have the claw controller right here. That's this. Okay, it's going to be this circle here, the nerve circle, and I'm going to add an attribute in here. So I have translate, rotate, scale, visibility. My new attribute would be below that. So I'm going to go up to edit, and I'm going to go down to add attribute, and I'm going to click that with my left mouse button. The attribute that I would like to add is going to be based off the long name. The long name is going to be maybe claw grip. Not claw grope. Claw grip. And it does need to be keyable because I do want to key this. It's going to be a keyed animation. We're going to leave the data type to float. We're going to leave the attribute type to scholar. we can give this thing a minimum and a maximum. If I give this thing a minimum of 10, like negative 10, then I can say that at negative 10, I would like these claws to be positioned a certain way. At a maximum of maybe positive 10, I would like these claws to be positioned a certain way. And the default is going to be the way that it's sitting right now, or the way that I deem it to be. And the default I'm going to set it to is 0, the halfway point. When I hit OK, you're going to see that now I get a claw grip in the attributes of the channel box, okay? And if I have it selected and you can see I slide this, absolutely nothing is happening. And the reason for that is that the claw grip is not connected to anything. So basically, this thing needs to be set up. And the way to do that is that, let's say I clicked off of this and I decide I'm going to add them a little bit later. So I come back to add them. I need to select the claw controller. You're going to see if I select the claw controller and I go up to edit like I did before to add something, you're going to see that we have some things grayed out. And unfortunately, one of the things that we have grayed out is setDrivenKey. It's right up here. Okay. To make that accessible, what we want to do is we want to select any one of these, okay, any one of these attributes. So if I click on claw grip like that with my left mouse button, highlight it, I'll come up to edit, and when I come back up to edit, I'm going to come down to setDrivenKeys. You're going to see that I can select it now. It's not grayed out. So edit, setDrivenKey. That's going to pop up this window. Okay. Now we have what's called a driver, and we have what's called a driven object. So you could think of it like a driver wanting to drive a car. The driver's going to control the car up to a point. The driven is going to be the car. Okay? And what we're using is whatever's going to be driven is going to have some type of attribute. And we could say putting it in first gear or something like that and going forward, or putting it in reverse. Okay? So there's a few different ways that we can think of this so that it makes sense. Once you do this a couple of times, you're going to be golden. So with this object selected, the claw controller, I want that to be the driver because I added this attribute, which is in turn going to move each one of these. Okay? It's going to rotate each one of these objects, or it's going to drive them to rotate. So I will select the claw controller, and I need to load it as the driven. The driver. So I'm going to select it, come down to load driver, click on it with my left mouse button. That loads the claw controller. So right in this box will be the claw controller. And I have to say which part of the claw controller is going to drive whatever's going to be driven. So first I got to decide what is going to drive and what is going to be driven. So this is our driver, the claw controller. What is going to be driven? Not the claw controller, but each one of these. We're going to drive the claws. Okay? So we need to load those as driven. I'll click on this right here. And you see I have claw 1, 4, and 3. Now I have to do a little bit of a connection deal. Okay? I have to consider what attribute of the claw controller is going to drive the claws. And I set up a new attribute called claw grip. Okay? Now you guys could set this up to another attribute here and connect them the same way, but that's getting into a little more advanced topics. What we want to do now is focus on this attribute here that is doing nothing at the moment and have it to do what we would like it to do and have it work the way that we would like it to work. Okay? So the claw controller, its attribute called claw grip, is going to drive these 3 claws, and I'll select all 3. Well, what attribute of these 3 claws is it going to drive? Well, it should be, and I can test it. I'll come over here, select one. I believe it's rotate Z. Yes, it's rotate Z. And it should be the same for each one. And look, this one's not. So what I'm going to do is, since it's not set to each rotate Z, is that I must have set this up to be able to select the rotate tool, and when I select it, you're going to see this. For me to grab this line, or this handle right here, and drag it up, it moves all of my rotate X, Z, and Y, or X, Y, and Z. So all of my axes rotate, and these are the claws. So I have to determine that since not all of them are set to Z, I'm going to have it rotate the attributes of all, see, all of these. So all of my rotate attributes are going to be, or rotate axes, are going to be rotated for this claw to get up into a grip position. And now I have my setup. So there's a few ways I like to say this, and I was doing this when I was learning, is that I said, okay, the claw controller is going to be the driver. Its key to driving the claws is going to be the claw grip. Okay, so the driver needs the key, which is the claw grip, to drive the mechanism or the car, which are the claws. That's what's going to allow this thing to move. And this part, its attributes to go forward are going to be like the wheels. And for this part, it's the rotations. Okay, now it's a general thing, you might have to change it, but I also like to say the reverse. So to make the wheels move in the car example, the wheels moving are going to be based off of the car's attributes. So the cars here are the objects. They're going to be moving. Which parts of them are going to be moving, right? So the rotation of the claws are going to be driven by the claw grip attribute of the claw controller. Okay? So the rotation of the tires are going to be driven from, if you want to use key or motor, and controlled by the person driving the car. Okay? Now, I know it's not the best analogy for this part, but it makes sense. And I would go through this a couple of times. That way, when you set up the set-driven keys, it makes a little more sense each time. You just have to do it a few times to get used to it. So the claw controller's attribute claw grip is going to control or drive the claw 1, 4, and 3 in the attributes of rotation. So it's going to drive their rotation. Or the rotation of the claws are going to be driven by the claw grip attribute of the claw controller. And that one sounded a little better actually. So we're going to go with that. And what I'm going to do here is I have these objects right here, and I can see where they are position wise, and I'm not worried about that. What I am worried about is this guy. So I'm going to go between this and these claws as we work with this, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the controller. When I select the controller, I'm making sure that the claw grip is at 0. Okay? The claw grip at 0 is what I'm going to consider these claws to be in their current state. So I do not need to change anything in the set-driven keys because these selections are valid throughout this whole process. Okay? Now, this is going to be what changes the claw grip. So if I go to 10 or -10 or 0, that's where I have to put my settings. So for the most part, when it's first at 0 and these are in their rest position, if you want to consider it that, because I will use that in rigging as well, you're going to go over here to key these. And we're going to set a key, just like keying other objects to move the translations or rotations, okay? We're driving those with keyframes. In this case, we're making the claw grip key, and you'll see when I select these, like I selected one of the claws, it has keys on the rotations now. That's basically what we're getting at to drive the functionality of the claw grip. And you guys will see that in a later lesson, that we can go in there and change the keys and look at them in the graph editor and all that good stuff. But for now, we just want to set this up to open and close, and that is going to be how we get this thing to work. Okay, so at 0, the claw grip at 0, these are in this state, this position. When I put this to -10, you guys could either have these close or open. For me, I'm going to have them open. So -10, in this case, I'll select each one of these claws, and I'll rotate them to be open. And maybe I'll get them, and I'm just going to eyeball them, okay, to where they look as though they're pretty close to the same angle, okay? And I'll get it like this and just for the sake of tutorial time, that's okay. Alright, so I'm basically saying that I want them to be in that position. And I double check this by selecting the claw controller and making sure that I did change this to -10. If it was still on 0, I would key over their position at 0, which was up here, and I would key over that with the position they are in now. So I do like to select this controller again, make sure I did change the value, and set another key. And when we do this, we always have to test. So I'll come back to claw grip, select it, hold down my middle mouse button, and drag to the right and left, and it's opening up, which is really good because you're going to see that now those are connected, and I can move on to the positive values. And you're also going to see that my claw grip will not go past 0 because even though this is on +10, my next key will bring these to where I set them at 0, no further. So what I'm going to do here is make sure the claw grip's at 10 now. And I'll take each one of these things and I'll have them meet up here in the middle to where they can grip something. Like so. I'll go back and select my claw controller once I have these positioned the way I would like them to be. Make sure that that is at a +10 now, and I will set a key. I'll come over here to the claw controller, select it, hold down my middle mouse button, and drag it back and forth. And -10 goes all the way down. 0 takes it about to the right position. So I can type in 0, make sure. Yep, the rest position. And 10 is going to be the full grip. So now we can get this thing to really try to grab. And the nice thing is that it will update. So if I rotate this, and let me just close this because I'm done with this set driven keys, I'll close them. I'll go up here and I'll say, okay, I want to do a test animation. I can select my claw and rotate it like this, and I could test my attributes as well by selecting the claw grip and having it clench onto something. So bam, it could pick something up, and then I can go to my rotation of those, have it come to the other side, maybe put it down, or maybe it's trying to grab something that's moving around. Okay, so this can add quite a bit to your animations. When you're done, you can put this at 0. And if you would like, clean up your scene. So go up to Edit, down to Delete by Type, and you can do Delete All by Type. We're going to do Non-Deformer History. This object is the way that it is, and if everything is labeled out okay, we can actually export this. So we can go to Export, like File, down to Export Selection, or in this case there's only the claw, so I could go to Export All right here. And it's going to ask me what I would like to export it as. And I'm just going to put this on my desktop for the moment. So I'll go to Desktop and I'll say, I would like to have this as a Maya ASCII, and I'm going to call it claw. And we can say maybe this is the one that has set driven keys. So set driven. And we don't need to make everything long, just make sure that you understand what the name signifies and why you labeled it that way. Once you guys send this out, what you can do is you can have any type of scene you want. So let's say that I was going to work on one of my other scenes. I go to File, Open Scene, and maybe I'm going to set my project to, let's say that we're going to do, I don't know, any one of these things. Where's the, let's go to that one. Set the project, and it's taking me back into here. Why did it take me to my desktop? That's a good question. So I can cancel that part and I'll just open the scene. And if I had something like this, I'll just open it up. Don't save that. And the scene's going to open up. And this is something that I'm messing with for the company, and I can take a scene like this and say, okay, well I would like to bring that claw in here, and I'll go to File and I'll want to import the claw. So I'll go to File, down to Import. I'll go to where it's located, and usually you're going to want to drag it into your scenes folder and drag whatever textures you have for that claw into the source images folder. But I'm going to go to the desktop and I'm going to find the claw that I I sent out. So there's the claw with set-driven-keys. I'll import it, and I'm going to see if I can find it. So Window, Outliner, and where's the claw? I know it's in here somewhere. It's probably going to be labeled after what I had called it, which I'm not sure that I even labeled it, which is bad. Yep, I didn't look. Bad teacher. So I'm going to go over here, hit F, frame that claw. I could scale it. Oops. Right? And I'll move it. Alright. So now this thing is kind of like a big beast. It's probably going to interact with something. And some of my stuff comes over, and look, it's not actually letting me select those, but let's see if our set-driven keys came over that way. If not, I may need to bring it in as, nope, they work. But we could also have brought it in as FBX. So I may have to, worst case scenario, remake this quick selection set so I can have this thing go and pick things up and all that good stuff. And now all I've done is export it as one object, and I worked with just the one object. So you guys are going to start working to where you can have just the claw as its own scene. That way you can export it or import it into a scene like this, and then start making an assets library of things that you've created, and you can make a scene out of those. Okay? So for the most part, we've covered quite a bit in this tutorial, and this should help with some of the final animations and such that you're going to have to create. So I'll see you guys next time, and we have a few other things to go over in the following tutorials.